Long.
Shalom.
Hello.
Shalom. Shalom. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So nice to have you back with me. I have a nice lesson for you guys today. Did you enjoy your lesson for Shabbat today?
Yes,
Yes.
yes, it surely did.
And I think Yah's putting together a beautiful team of people to put his message out to people,
Oh, yeah.
to get us lined up, and people who study and people who think and who can communicate. It's just a great thing. It's
Mhm.
awesome. Conda did a really wonderful job today. And
Yeah.
yeah, I'm just loving it actually. I'm loving the participation. I'm loving how we're all growing. So it's a good thing. It's a really good thing. And I'm happy that I'm part of you guys' journey on that.
Mhm.
Hallelujah. All right. So
Wow.
today, what we're going to be doing is lesson number 10. All right. Of course, you're already familiar with your vocabulary words. So this in particular week, you will learn an additional 1, 2, 3, 4. There's a lot of words here. I think they've increased it. 6, 9. Yeah, you got a lot. You get like 18 more words here. I think they're increasing the vocabulary. And so, you got Shabbat, Korat, the Baka, the Banad, the Yarad. There you are, right there again, Yored, Yarad. Anna the Bodrit, the Shana, the Alpe, the Anashim, the Nashim, the Avot, the Banoth, the Akayoth, the Olam, the Lakim, the Ad, the Kam. So we have all these different words that we're going to be using in this particular lesson, along with some other words that we've learned along the way. What we're going to talk about today are some exceptions. There's some exceptions to some rules that we've gone over. So we're going to look at some exceptions for the plurals that we discussed, and we're going to talk about which was in lesson number or rule number 5. We're going to look at the semicuth form, which is the two nouns that are put together. There's going to be that, and also too, we're going to look at the lessons or the rules of number 6, which deals with the verbs, the weak letters. And so they're addressing all the little notes that they have before that they didn't address in those lessons to let us know that there are some exceptions. There are exceptions to rules. And so our rules here today are going to bring it out. They're going to tell us about some of these rules. So one of the first exceptions that we want to discuss today is dealing with plurals. Okay. Plurals. And that's going to be rule number 5. And they talk about some irregular plurals. And let me pull this right here. So you already have page number 4. And if you don't, I can get it to you, where it tells us that, in order to make a noun or masculine noun plural, all you have to do is add the yod and the mem. Whereas to make a feminine noun plural, all you add is the oath. Okay, that was on page number 4. So below, what they're going to do is they're going to list 6 different, commonly occurring exceptions. There's some exceptions to this rule. All right. And those exceptions to turn a man from plurality, you're not going to call him, I think one man of the plural of man would be anashim. So that's an exception. Okay. So it's not going to be ishim, right? It's going to be anashim. They don't tell us why, but they tell us this is the exception. So kind of like in our Torah portion this week, if you read it in the Hebrew, you would know that he said that Korach had bought these anashim. He bought these men. So plurality for men are not ishoth or ishim. They're actually called anashim. Okay. That's something that you're going to learn. That's one of your vocabulary words. Okay. The next one that you have is the plurality of a wife. Her name is not going to be ishoth. You're not going to put the OTH on or the wa on the top on the end. What she's going to be called is called a nashim. Nashim. So if you can look carefully, you would see, and these are things that you are going to remember, okay? Or you must remember and put it to your memory bank. So one is na shim, and the other one is na shim. So you can see that for the feminine, all they're missing is the aleph that goes right here. So that could be kind of easy for us to remember with the man. So why did they take away the aleph? I would say simply because what the aleph represents. Of course, They're never going to tell you the cultural meaning, but of course we know the aleph is the strength. He means the strong. Okay. The strength of this is going to be an aleph. And once you put that strength on it, then you have a man. All right. So the Nashim is the female for the women, right? The Anashim is the man, the men, excuse me. The plurality, of course, we're talking about exceptions. For father, to make him plural, you wouldn't say avim. We're not going to say that. We're not going to do the ayim, the yod and the mim. We're going to put the oath on. That's an exception. Why isn't the oath feminine? Yeah, but this is what they call an exception to the rule. So for fathers, it's going to be avoth. Okay. For the daughters, it's going to be banoth. Okay. You see? And then, of course, the plural of sisters. Here's a sister right here, right? Here's the akoth right here. For the sister, it's not going to be akothoth. It's not going to be akothoth. It's not going to be that. Okay. It's akayoth. You hear that yoth? Akayoth. So we have to get used to saying those things. And sometimes you'll remember and sometimes you won't, but just understand there are exceptions to these rules of plurality. Okay. And of course, just a reminder, the yod and the mem is the masculine ending. And the feminine ending is the oath. It's the wa and the tav on the end right there. That's your feminine. So he's saying that there's some exceptions. All right. Of course, you'll get the sheet. And then, of course, for years, it's not going to be Shana. It's not going to be Shanim. It's not going to be Shanoth. Well, why is this an exception? Well, because Shana is a feminine. It's feminine. So, right? So shouldn't it have an oath on the end? Yeah, but this is an exception. So you're going to have an eem on the end. So what it's saying is sometimes you're going to see masculine nouns like father, ab, with a feminine ending. Or you're going to see something feminine with a masculine ending. So then the wives are going to have a masculine ending. The fathers are masculine, going to have a feminine ending. Okay. So that's how it works. All right. Of course, your daughter's a bath is singular. And then all of a sudden you said, well, we just put the oath on and it'd be batoth. They said, no, we're not going to do that. What we're going to do is call it banoth. So these are just exceptions. That's a rule number 5, which is on page number 4. The next exception, right, is going to be doing the exceptions to rule number 8, which is the semiku form, right? If you can remember, the semiku form talked about how you can turn, two nouns that you put together in the construct phase would be the blank of, okay? That's what a semikuth is. It's the blank of, the and then of, like, you got to go through some changes. So the semikuth forms of ak, av, and kam, which we know kam is one of our vocabulary words that have to do with father-in-law, and then pay, okay, which has to do with the mouth. And the av is your father, and then your ak is your brother. Okay, so you're going to get this if you know your vocabulary. So it says we learn in the rule 8 on page number 10 that to say in the Hebrew, the book of Moshe, right, or the wife of, the blank of, okay, Avraham, we do not need to have the equivalent of 2 words, the and of, in the sentence. You don't. All you need to do is take those 2 nouns and change them into what they call a semiku form. So if we just want to put the words book or wife, okay, if we just want to put those words book or wife, etc., into the semiku form, then the words the and of are implied. So let's make it simple. In the Hebrew, it's not going to say, of course, there is no word for of, okay, but there is a word for the, and that's ha. But you're not getting that when you got 2 nouns next to each other. Those 2 nouns right there is the horse of Moshe. Okay. And so the horse is Sus and Moshe. That's all you would say. The reason why we don't have to do any changes to this is simply because the Sus right? The sus is not, it doesn't have a on the end. It's not susa, or neither is it, somebody tell me, masculine, horses, what would it be?
Suso.
Susim,
Susan.
or good job, or su soth, not su soth, okay? So when it has an ending on the end of it like this, you got to change that. And the way that you change it is you have to either remove a letter and switch some vowels around, which they're going to give us an example to show us what that look like. So good job on that, Yaret. So the sus, of course, here is the horse of. It's not a horse. It's the horse. There's a difference between the horse of and a horse. Okay. The is a definite article, which is pointing to, ownership. It's not just a horse. Okay. It's the horse. What horse? This horse, that one there, Moshe's horse. So we also saw that when you have two nouns in a semicolon form, like that ends, like I just said, in the nouns that end with this they'll change that to a tav. Okay. Nouns that end in the eem will change to this little setup right here. There's two dots and then the yod. For example, we haven't been there, but it's called the Baneh. The Baneh of Yisrael. When you look at Baneh, you would say, well, that's in a semikuf. Well, what's the real one? Banim. That still means sons. Okay. So anytime they have any of those endings, if you go back to your page number 10, you have to remember that those forms will change. So anything with a hey on the end will end up becoming a tav. Anything with the eem on it was going to be changed to those two dots and a yod. According to this, now we're going to deal with these nouns that we have here of the brother, the father-in-law, and the mouth. None of these end in a and none of them end in a eem, right? So when we put those into their semikuf form, they should stay the same. But they say, no, these are exceptions. These are exceptions, because that's what we're talking about today. You would think once they go in there, because there's none of those endings, there's not an av, avim or avoth. You don't see that. I'm writing English a little bit, forgive me. You don't see vavoth. You don't see any of that, because by themselves, you would think as soon as I put it next to another noun, I don't have to make any changes according to the rule that's on page number 10, which is rule number 8. They're saying there are some exceptions. So this in particular word here, this noun called a brother, which is ak, if you want to change him to the brother of, they're saying that you and I have to change it to akih. That's how you and I have to change it to that when it goes into a semikuf form. So instead of it just being in a sentence, ak, and then we would go, what can I say about the ak? The brother of, let's just say Dawid. Instead of it just being ak Dawid, instead of it just being ak Dawid in a sentence, according to this rule, it would be Akih Dawid. Okay. So you would say, well, I thought Aki means my brother. And then you would put that next to each other, like my brother Dawid. That doesn't make sense. Well, if you understand this rule, this exception, you would know that this Aki right here is basically this little yod and this dot right here is the signifying exception. It's letting you know this is an exception. You just can't have just the name by itself. So let me slow it down and roll it back again. If I had Sus, and Sus is a what? A horse. Okay. If it's by itself, there'd be no changes. And then they would say this a horse of Moshe. You know. I think that's how you spell his name. I forgot. No, H. Here you go. That'd be the horse of Moshe. Okay. But what they're telling us is because we're dealing with these in particular nouns, these, not just horses or anything. This is about a father, or let me start off, a brother, a father, and a father-in-law in the mouth of. That deals with nothing but these in particular masculine nouns that deal with these individuals right here. Or these in particular nouns. They have to go through a change. What I see that helped me remember that this is an exception is the fact that they would take those in particular nouns and all they add to them is this yod dot, this kerem, this dot, and this yod, as you can see, that's here, that's here, that's here, and that's here. So that right there should let you know that that's an exception. And though the dot and the yod, okay, and so in this particular thing right here, according to these only 4 words here, only these, means that this is in a semicolon form, and it means the blank of, the of. That's all it means. Those are the exception. You could put anything, okay? But the things that they're using right here are the mouth, the father-in-law, and the father and the brother. Those 4 is where this exception is applied. No other words. No, understand. Any questions? That's it. Those in particular, the brother, the father-in-law, and the mouth. That's the only 4 nouns that has this dot and this yod that represents that's the semicolon form blank of, and then dot, 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 whatever it is. Okay. Any questions? I know it seems a little confusing, but it's only these 4 nouns that this in particular rule, this exception to this rule is applying to. No other words. Okay. Just like father, and the man and the woman, they'll have their rule that was changed. Okay. So that's a rule that you just have to get familiar with. And that's how they let you know what it is. But anyway, it said one of the most easiest way to spot this irregular semicolon form in these in particular words like av or ak and av and kam is unique, right? They also let you know that this right here, this vowel pattern is a quick way. I saw this pattern right here, that dot and the yod. I saw that. Here's another one right here that tells you that that's on the first part of those in particular nouns, which is brother, father, and father-in-law. They don't have it with the pay. I don't know why, but they don't. I guess too, because it only has like one letter in front besides the yod. So this, what you would call here, is this ah sound, and it's reduced, meaning it's like a real quick ah. It's called a reduced vowel. Okay, it's reduced, and it means it's changeable. Okay, changeable means that it could go from a reduced to a short, or it could go all the way up to a long vowel. It can change. All right, so it's changeable, and that's a whole nother lesson. It talks about changeable and unchangeable vowels. When we get deeper into our grammar, then we'll be able to hit that. But anyway, this is another indicator for these in particular nouns: ak, av, and kam, brother, father. So they're what? They're masculine. Okay. There are some examples down here that they give us, right? So Yosef, Aki, to Shimon, Halak la Mitzrayim. Okay. So this one right here is Yosef, and then it says Yosef, and he's the brother of. So here's your semikuf right here, the of. Well, how do you know it's the of? Doesn't say it right there, right? And you would think this is Aki, meaning my brother, but it's really telling you that this right here lets you know. And this right here also lets you know that this is in a semicolon form. Number one, because this is a noun. This is another noun. But if you know your vocabulary, you'll be able to pick that up, right? So then you and I'd have to be able to look for these little symbols right here to tell us, well, that is a semicuth. And a semicuth means that you got two nouns that are side by side. The first noun, and I'll work from this direction. The first noun, this one right here, the first one is in line, is going to be the. Okay, or excuse me, forgive me, depending on where it's at. The second is going to be the of. Okay. The second is going to be the of. Because this is a noun, this is a noun, this is a noun, this is a verb, and this is a noun. So you got these three nouns right here. Okay. Three nouns. But they're telling you the first noun is a person, and then he says the brother of Yosef, the brother of Shimon, not Yosef, my brother Shimon. Okay. So these are just some grammatical rules and sentence structures that we have to look out for. The next one is Yaakov. Okay. And then it says here, the Avi. Well, Avi means my father, just without it. But how do we know that it's a semicolon? Well, we know this little mark right here tells us. This little mark here tells us. This right here, knowing that by saying my father, Yaakov, my father, Yehuda, that doesn't make sense. So then another's an indicator, because if it was just father, Av by itself, take that out of the way, that wouldn't make sense. It'd be a father. Okay. So it gets kind of a little confusing sometimes because it's like these little rules that you have to know. Okay. And here Yehuda is the what? He's a kami. He is the father-in-law of Tamar. Okay. And he yashav, he sat down. So those are going to be the rules, and there's the exceptions. And so they give you those to let you know. Do I expect you to remember them? No, not right now. All this is not going to play into your mind until you get into reading the Torah. And I'd say attempt to do it every day. Even if you're reading a couple lines, just try your best to read it. There is a note here that deals about the Al Pi. Okay. Al Pi means upon the mouth of. Okay. So we find very often in the Torah that there's this phrase. Okay. And Al Pi means a command. Okay, because all means upon, and then pay is mouth. Okay, that's mouth. Okay, and since we just learned that pay is the mouth of, right? Because that's what it means. Therefore, the phrase all pay literally as on the mouth of, and anything that's on the mouth of is a command. And so they're going to give us an example about when Yosef gave the wagons on the mouth of. So, and he gave to them, Yosef, these wagons called the alagol, which are carts, upon the mouth of Paro. What do you mean upon the mouth of? Upon the word that came out of that mouth, which is a command of Pharaoh. So you'll see this phrase in the Torah. So if you notice, the teaching is really talking about how things are going to work and operate within the Torah. That's what I like about these books, is that they tell you about how these words are going to be, because the command in the Torah is called a zah. Okay. So when I first saw this upon the mouth of, I was like, well, what is that? Al Peh, right? Upon the mouth of. It's like, upon the mouth. What do you mean? Well, I didn't understand that it was a command. Okay. It's a command that came from the mouth of that in particular person. So anything that comes from the mouth. And so you'll see this a lot, very often, and you're going to see it applied to Yohe Wahe a lot. I think in our Torah portion, in the last 2 weeks, I've seen this like 3 or 4 times. So that's what that means. Any questions so far? Okay, no worries. So let's deal with this exception number 3, which deals with the exceptions to rule number 6. As you know, that our weak letters that are on are verbs, not nouns. So you can see these letters, the yo, the wa, and the noon, and the hey, in a noun, and they're not to be changed. The only time they're considered weak is when they're with a verb, an action. And so how many letters do you have for a verb? Somebody tell me. 3. You're going to have 3 letters. Okay. Right. Like a call, that's to eat. Okay. Shamar, which is the guard. You know, Shema. All it is memorization, you guys. Once you learn what these letters look like, and you know that they're 3 letters, you're like, oh, that's a verb. That's a verb. And then you got your memorization, your vocabulary. And so you know a call means to eat. You know, Shamar is the guard. You know, Shema is the listener here. Okay. But anytime you have any of these letters attached to a verb, because there are some verbs that have these letters in them. As soon as you see that, you know that if you add a letter to the front of the verb, just say this is a verb. And then you can add something to the front or something to the end of the verb, or you can put something in the middle of the verb. As soon as you do that, if that verb contains any of these letters, wherever you put this box at, that's where that letter is going to drop off at. It's a rule that you just have to remember. Okay. And so here we're going to see how in 3 cases where this letter drops out of the verb, even though it's not one of the weak letters. Okay, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about that there are letters that are going to drop out, even though they're not from this weak verb family. Okay, even though they're not one of them. This is what you call an exception to rule number 6. Okay, and the first example of this is this word, which you call lakak. That means he took. Okay, it's a verb, to take something. Okay, extended, you know, to learn or to marry or to whatever. There's a whole bunch of different applications to this in particular word, right? This verb. So when we put the verb lakak into a future tense, okay, because right now, if it's 3 letters by itself, which you've learned, is this a perfect or an imperfect?
Perfect.
It's perfect. Tell me why it's perfect.
3
3
letters.
letters, masculine.
3 letters and it's masculine, is 3 MS. So there's nothing to add. So nothing's been added to it, and there's nothing that's been subtracted from it. There's no additions or subtractions. Okay. So the action of this word is either he took or she took or it took. Okay. So if I put a, la caca on it, I put a on it, it's still perfect. I just feminized it. That's all. Okay. But the original 3-letter root by itself is in its perfect state. Okay. But if I want to make it into a future tense, if it's future, remember we have the what? We have the past, we have the present, and we have the future. Right. So if I'm going to turn this into a future tense, I have to decide where I'm going to put that letter or what's going to happen. If it's in the past, I'm going to put the letter at the end. If it's in the present, I'm going to put the letter in the middle. If it's in the future, I'm going to put the letter at the front of what? Of the verb. That's what I'm going to do. Okay. Because the verb has 3 letters, and just use the call right quick. And then we'll go to the lakak in a second. If I want to make this into a future tense, I'll just add a letter right here. If I don't want to make it into something in the past that I've done and I performed, I'll put the letter right here in the back. or the little, suffix part. So prefix and suffix, you can look at it like that. If I want to do something in the present is actively happen, I can put it either in this spot right here, or I'll put it right here. Okay. So anything that goes on the end, if it's a suffix. Anything goes in the front, it's a prefix. If you remember that from your school. And then anything in the middle is an infix. Okay. So that's all these are when I talk about adding something to the front, the middle, or the end. Okay. Future, the past, present, and future. This is the end, which is in the past. And this is going on right now in the middle. And then we got something on the front. So you can look at it any way you want to. You can say the future's in the front. You could say the present's in the middle because it's in the middle of something going on, or it's in the past, it's in the end. It happened, it's done. Okay. You can look at it from a grammatical standpoint. I added something to the beginning, it's a prefix. I put a pre on the beginning of it. I put something in the middle of it, that is the infix. I put something on the end of it, that's the suffix. So that's how you are able to describe where something's at, and it's tense. Has it been done? Is it done? And when it's going to get done? Okay. Or it has been finished. So when you put this lakak, this in particular verb in the future tense, and this is an exception, this lamed drops out, even though it's not one of the weak letters, because the weak letters are here up top. Yod, the wa is Yonah right there. Okay. Those are weak because it's a dove, it flies away. Okay. So the exception is that we're going to remove if it has a lamed on it and you put it into the future. Okay. Because right here by itself, it's in the past because it's perfect. Right. That means he did something. He took in the past. It's finished. It's complete. It's perfect. So here's the example of putting something into the future. I said, I will, not I will take. That I will is this letter aleph right here. That's what it should be. It'd be elkok. But they said, no, not with this exception. What we're going to do is this lamed is going to drop out and you're going to get ekkok. Do I expect you to remember this? No, I expect you to remember it. All I want you to understand is that there's an exception besides these letters up here. And so when you see this word that you're unfamiliar with, when you're reading your Torah, you'll be like, ekkok, what is that? Well, if you remember the rule, if you can, you'd be like, oh, it's ekkok. Okay, they put a letter. Okay, so what was there? Because I know that lakak is the vocabulary. I've never seen ekkok before. So what does it happen here? And so when you look at this, you'd be like, oh, that's 3 letters. So that looks like it's perfect. But that ain't true. Not according to this exception. This is still in a future tense. It's still in a future tense. Why? Because this is an exception. It's an exception. And that's where it can get a little confusing. You see? Because it's still 3 letters. So every 3 letter that you see, and that's what they're telling us, there's an exception to this when you're putting it into a future tense by adding this here. The I will is that aleph. What do I want you to get from this? Yeah, there's an exception, but adding a aleph on the front means I will. And I will is something that's supposed to be done in the future. Okay. I also want you to understand that 3 letters within themselves that are organic, I would say, lakak by itself, that's perfect. These 3 letters right here is future tense. But if you don't know the rule, then you would never know that. And also, too, there is no word. There is no verb called ekkok. There is no word that has this ekkok here. There is none. No vocabulary word called ekkok. None. There's only probably 600 verbs that you'll learn. And out of all 600, you will never come across this word. So that means that something happened, something changed. And if it changed, then you would know, oh, this aleph on the front means I will. That's what that aleph means. Anytime an aleph is added to something, it means I will, future tense. Okay. Just like if you add anything to tav on the front. What's the tav? Somebody tell me, add it to the front. You will. Yes. Remember, don't forget the will. Because often I would say you, it means you, but I keep forgetting that there's tenses. And you got to remember that you have to put everything in its proper tense. And that's what happens a lot when we read the Torah. A lot of people don't understand that a lot of things that they're reading is future tense. They might think it's in the past. So if you think it's something's in the past, that makes your mind go to the past like it's done and it's over. But if you understand the language, you'd be like, oh, no, wait a minute, that's future. So here's a great example, just on a side note. On our lesson today that I told you what Yahweh's desire was, right? The word was yada, but yada means to know, right? So he said that he wanted them to know. But the verb, the way that he spoke this verb is called a jussive. I'm just trying to let you know how things can change your mind. I understood yada to mean to know. Okay. But it doesn't mean just to know. It means that it could be known some different way. You know, they transliterate as to he's going to show you who's his and who's not. And then you'll know. Well, why does he want you to know? Because this in particular conjugation of a jussive is a volitional, what you would call a volitional verb, okay, conjugation. So it's really a command or a wish or a desire, okay? So when someone says something in a jussive, just on a side note, it changes the way that a person's supposed to understand this verb on how it's functioning. How's it functioning? Is it functioning as a real direct command? Like I'm commanding you to know? Or is it Yahweh trying to discuss with us and tell us what his desire is? Well, Yahweh's intention was, according to our Torah portion, about him knowing a yada was not just to know. It was the desire of Yahweh is for us to know what his desire is. It's not just to us to know it, just to know it. He wants us to know his desire, his command, not his wish, his desire, right? What he's hoped for, what his real will is, because your desire is your will. So Yahweh wanted them to know his will. He just didn't want them to know it for just to know information. He wanted them to know his will. And I was only able to get that when I understood the conjugations of the verb. And that's the reason why I'm talking about it. Because when you look at how something is in the past, in the present, and the future, if you just understand it as it just being, and you don't know when it was done, or you think it was done at a certain time in the past, then you would think it's behind you. You don't think it has any relevance. So everything that we're talking about in terms of the language and in terms of our study is to get us to understand how things are being said. That's the purpose of you learning the language. If you know how it was said, you'll be able to respond accordingly and appropriately, right? So in this case, they're going to drop off even though it's not a weak letter, they're going to drop the lamed off on this in particular future tense verb. Okay. Therefore, there's a complete list of lakak in the future tense as follows. So as we see here, they're going to give us some examples about I will, which is here, you will, which is tikkak, you will, feminine singular. You still got the tav, but you got the yod right here on the end that lets you know that this is feminine, because you by itself is masculine with just the tav. The identification marker of it being feminine is a tav in the front and a yod in the back. That's a piece to the puzzle. A tav just in the front is you masculine. The aleph in the front is first person common, you, I mean individual, I, first person. And that I can be a female or a male, okay? But you can be a masculine, or the you that I'm talking to, second person, could be feminine. If it's feminine, it's going to be a tav in the front and a yod in the back, okay? If it's he will, the first letter right there is a yod. Okay. So the lakak right here, this letter's dropping off when I'm adding any of these letters, which is an aleph, a tav for the female with the yod on the end, and a yod in the front for he will. And then when she will, you have the tav again. And that's a like a little weird way for them to do that. But this is just the way it is. I don't know why, but they chose to put that letter there. When I say they, I'm talking about the creator himself has decided to use the tav here to represent the feminine on tikkak. Okay. Tikwak. Okay. So if you know your pieces to your puzzle, when you see these words, ekak, tikkak, tikkaki, or yikak, or tikkak again. And if you notice, here's a tikkak here and here's a tikkak here. But I thought you said that that's you masculine singular, and then you got tikkak here is the she, is the third person female singular. So how's this working? Because up here is the second person for you as a masculine. Down here is she, which is feminine. That's the rule. That's just what it is. But what would determine the conversation about whether or not, how would you know that this tikkak up here is masculine and this tikkak down here is feminine? How would you know? Well, there would be other words within the sentence structure that would tell you. If she was to take something, right? And this is a verb that she's doing, this is an action that she says she will take something. More than likely, other words within that sentence will have a feminine ending. That's all I can tell you at this point. Okay. Here's something else. We will. It's not we, it's we will. Okay. That's a noon. So the noon in front will tell you that. Okay. Here, tiku, you, plural. So you see that? So you got the you with the tav and the on the u on the end. You. And it's masculine. Well, how about feminine? Oh, you got the tav on the front and you got the na on the end. That's you. But here's the tikna again, and that's a third person. This is a third person, plural, down here. Excuse me. The tikna up here is plural. The tikna here is plural too, because it's talking about they. So you got it again. So these are the things that you'll be able to understand and have to watch out for. Okay. So here's the point that I'm trying to get you to understand is that when you got a word like lakak, this is not a weak letter. It'll drop off when you try to add a aleph, a tav with the yod, tav again, the noon when you add, and it's always we will. It's always will, it's always will, it's always will, because it's future tense. So we have to remember that we're talking about future tense. Okay. This doesn't apply to the past tense. Doesn't apply. The lamed will not fall off, only for the future tense. Okay. Just another exception to the rule. And that's why sometimes, like I said, it's hard to remember, because if you're not actively reading all the time, you would kind of forget this rule. So what I'm trying to do is get you to understand how these terms are coming to play. It's just adding these letters to the front. If you know what these endings are, and you know these combinations, if you know the tav and the na on the end are, feminine, you're straight, you'll know that. If you know the yod and then the wa on the end is the piece, and you got the verb right here between those two, you can be like, okay, I know what that is. Any letters that are added to the front, and I want to say this, and I want you to remember, any letters that are added to the front are future tense. I don't care if they got something on the end. The only reason why this on the end is to identify if it's masculine or feminine, or if it's singular or plural. Any letters that are added to the front of anything is going to be future, even if it has something on the end, the u or the na or the u or the na. Okay. So you can see, look at the combination right here. You got the tav and the u right here. You got the yod and the u right here, right? But they mean something totally different. This one means, of course, masculine, represented by that yod, but this u on here means they. But this yod right here means they who, the masculine will take, okay? The tav right here is you. And the u on is you, what? Plural. You. So when I'm talking to you, I'm talking to the group of people that's in front of me. When I'm talking about they, and if you notice, and they don't put it in this book, but I'm going to show it to you. This is first person singular, common singular. This is first person common plural up here. The we can be me and you, both male and female. The I can be male or female. Okay. So there's no reason to put masculine or femininity there. The you here is second person, and it could be plural. Okay. Because of what? This ending right here. This is second person right here. The tavs, they tell you that. This is a third person. Why? Because it's a yod and this. I know it's a third person. This is a third person. Okay. Over here, I said first person, second person. That's masculine. That's feminine. This is a third person. This is third person. Masculine and feminine. So what am I saying? You're always going to have the first person, second person, third person. You're always going to have masculine and you're always going to have feminine. You're always going to have singular and you're always going to have plural. That's it. So if you know, if you're talking first person, then you would know that this letter right here is a first person talking about singular. And if I see this on the front of something, then I know that's plural. So that's why it's important for you to know that. What's a good way for you to understand or remember that the aleph is the first person? Somebody give me some ideas. How would you remember that aleph is the first person for I? Besides you just saying it accepted. How would you know that? Or what would you identify it as being one?
The ox, just the ox.
There you go. An ox is single. See what I'm saying? What other way would you know it? It's the first letter in the Hebrew alphabet, which represents the number one. You understand? So that's easy to remember. Okay. Not just like, well, hey, the aleph just means one, or it means the first, I. You won't remember it like that. You have to attach it to something. That's what I'm trying to get us to understand. That I believe that the letters tell you things if you really look at them and look at them from an agricultural standpoint, or look at them from a where you can attach them to something. If they're just by themselves, then you won't remember it. You will not remember it if it's not attached to something. Okay. So when I talk about the noon, we know the noon. And if you notice, this is not in this book. This is just based on what I know about the agriculture. The noon represents the seed. But what's the seed? The seed is growth and it's continuance. You understand? Right? So I remember the noon being a seed, but a seed means in Hebrew means plurality, because seeds grow. So that's what I think about we or us, because the noon is used at the front of a word, and a noon can be used on the end, like Eloheinu. Eloheinu. What's Eloheinu? Elohe is Elohim, and a nu means our Elohim. You see? It's still plural, but it's at the end. Eloheinu. That's what it looks like, a nu at the end. You understand? So you got to find ways to remember things, and how you can remember them is knowing what they represent. Okay. That's how you remember it. So good job on that. How can you remember that the tav is you? What's a good way to remember that? What does the tav mean? The tav is two sticks that are put together. And that means a mark. Okay. That you're the mark. Okay. I also remember that the aleph is the aleph and the tav. So if I know this is I, okay, or the beginning, then I know this is you. So it's always going to be from, I want to speak to you. Okay. From beginning to the end. Okay. That's how it goes. I remember it that way. And so, a tav on the front is you. Okay. The tav on the back of a word on a vowel, a verb will be you too. Ta right here. Here's another ta right here. You know, ti on the back is I. You understand? So there's different pieces that you have to know. So you got to know how these function. You know, that's how you got to know you function. So I know these two right here are you, and every time I see ta on the end or I hear t, I know that that's talking about you. Every time I see ti, I know that's talking about I. You know, like ahavati, I love you. Okay, or a shamarti, you guard it, past tense because it's put on the end. So it's just a puzzle. And so once you get used to seeing these different combinations of this and this together, you'll be like, okay, I know what that is. Okay, I see this and I see that. Oh, I know what that is. Oh, but that looks very similar to this. So I got to just check if it's plural or single. You know, I know both of these are plural, but am I talking about you directly to you, straight to your face? Or am I talking to they, third person? Which one? So that's how you're figuring out. You're just going to figure out who's the first person, second person, third person. Then you're going to figure out if it's male or, excuse me, male or female. Then you're going to figure out if it's singular or plural. That's it. That's all you're figuring out. That's all you'll ever figure out. Okay. Along that, I forgot to tell you too, what is this in the past or is this in the present or is this in the future? When is this action being done? Because these are the only times it could be done. That's the only time that it could be done. All right. It's either in the past, present, and future. Only these three individuals can do it. And they could be singular or they could be singular or they could be plural. So when you look at these things, I want you to study it and understand that's what you're looking for. You're not just looking to say the word, because the word has changed. You know, nikak is we will take. You know, ekak is I will take. Tiku is, you know, you, plural. You know, yiku. Do you hear tiku and yiku? So what I want you to do, of course, thank you, Yah, is for when you get these words and you say them, I want you to say ekak. And when you say it, I want you to close your eyes and hear that then that means I. When you hear the te, that means you. Close your eyes and say it. Once you say it, say tikak. Close your eyes and say tikak. Tikak. And then you know that chak is to take and the te is you. And you know that you just said it like that. You're like, oh man, that's, you know, that's you. That's singular. You can hear it. I want you to start hearing yourself say these words. Okay. And I don't want you to get tripped up and say, well, that's tikak and this is tikak, but I thought you said this is singular. They're not making a mistake. This is just what it is. Okay. I say ni. If I said ni, what did I just say?
We will.
Thank you. I said
I will.
I will. If I said ti,
You will.
so anytime I hear out of somebody's mouth, that's I. If I hear anything ni, that means we. If I hear anything ti, that's you. If I said tiku and you hear the oo on the end, then you know that's plural. Ooh. So it's just sounds. If I say yik, then you know I'm talking about what? Yeah.
They.
That means he, or, but I didn't say yehu, yehu on the end. I didn't say that. I just say yeah. But if I say yehu on the end, so I don't care what the verb is. I can say yishmu. You see? I can put any verb I want in between these two letters. So let me help you get a little bit more understanding. So let's just get rid of the that, and let's just see what I'm talking about so I can show you. Let's just get rid of this, and then so you can see what I'm saying. Okay, so let's just get rid of the verb. Let's get rid of it and see what we have left, and it makes a lot of sense then. Let's get rid of it because we know the lamed is missing because we added stuff, and this is one of the exceptions. These are the things that you want to look at when you get your paper, when I send it to you. That's what you want to do. You want to understand what we is. You want to understand what you plural is. Those are the pieces that you are going to hear and understand. Visually, you're seeing it, but when you hear it, I want you to start hearing it. Okay? You know? So look, very similar. These two right here, very similar. Exactly the same. These two right here, exactly the same, but they have different meanings. Well, how would you know that this is a second person versus a third person if they sound exactly the same? The context will tell you, the sentence will tell you if it is third or second. There'll be other verbs that will let you know that, hey, they're talking to a third person. You would know it, okay? Because you'll know your endings. All right, so that would be that, all right? Because this rule is about future tense is applying to this one, even though it's not a weak letter. Does that make sense, you guys? So
Yes.
I can easily run through it and say, okay, this means this and that, but I want you to kind of, the things that I have problems with, I'm trying to get you to see, well, let's just cut through all that and really figure out what it is. Okay. Now, there's verbs that are ending in tavs, like the verb in your vocabulary word, which is called karath. Karath means to cut. That's the verb, a very simple way to do something, okay? To cut. But how would it be if I said I cut? I cut. Because this right here is perfect. We're not talking future tense now. We're talking about something that is, it's a 3-letter, okay? Nothing been added to it, okay? It by itself is perfect, okay? So how would I say I cut? Well, they're going to tell you right here. They're saying karath is to cut, and then I on the end is ti, okay? So it'll be karate, like karate. So what I do, I don't know if you can see my picture, but what I do, you guys, when I first learned this word karath, I thought about karate. And I remember when I was a kid, I used to put my hand like this and chop. Yeah. So it's easier for me to remember, right? So karate, I can say karate. That's what it sounds like, karate. Okay, karate. So, but no, they said, no, that's not going to happen. They said, no, Why? Because you can't have two tavs at the end of a verb. You can't. So something has to happen. And what's going to happen is the first tav is going to fall out. But I thought you said the only ones that can fall out are the weak letters on verbs. Well, these are the exceptions that they're telling us about the verbs. So what we're learning about it so far is the lamed, if it's on the front of a word, is lakak, that letter is going to fall off that verb when you're putting something into the future tense, period, end of story. The second one is the tav, okay? So you can't have, we know karath is the actual root verb to cut, but they're saying we can't have two tavs. It can't be karath, it'll be karate, okay? So you got to get rid of that tav. This first tav is going to fall out, and so this is what you're going to end up with. Are you going to remember this? Of course not. But what I am going to tell you is this. When you see it and you know your vocabulary, you'll be, oh, well, I know that this must be an ending because I know that the tav and the yod is ti. So what was there before? And you would know, oh, that's kara. Would it be kara? I would a hey on the end. Would it be kara or kara? No, I never saw that word. Oh, karath. That's because I was trying to figure out, well, how would you know? Well, if you don't know your vocabulary, then you'll never know. You have to guess. And it doesn't want you to do that. Okay. So when the tav of the root falls out, you will see the second tav always has a dot in it, which is right here. It has a dot in it, which is karate. Notice that the dot is in the tav. Okay. And what that means is, well, was there two tavs there? It's an indicator that it is. It definitely is. It means that that root had a tav in it. That's what it means. That's why they're telling you to be careful with the dot. Watch the dot. Here's another example. Okay. We also have, again, here it is, you. you cut feminine, you cut masculine plural, you cut feminine plural. Okay. So you have all these plural endings. You have plural endings for tame and ten, but should you keep that extra tav? No. So they're telling you this is the rule for this letter tav, that verbs that end, forgive my handwriting, getting lazy. The tav, any verb rule for the tav. It's like a verb rule for the lamed. Now we're talking about the tav. If your verb ends in a tav and you add for something like you, which is right here, masculine, you, right here, feminine, you plural, Tim, you plural, 10. You're going to get rid of this tav. You're going to shake it. So your words will then be ka-raten, ka-ratem, ka-rat, ka-rata. Okay. So when you get this, I want you to practice not how to say karata, right? Because you're going to do your vocabulary. But what I want you to remember is close your eyes and say ta, and you know that's you, and you know it's masculine. If I say t by itself, the letter t by itself, not ta, t. Close your eyes, say t, and that's feminine, and say t. So anytime you see a verb with t on the end, you would know, I know that sound. That sound is feminine, ta. Oh, that's masculine. So if I'm talking to a Koti Chandra, I wouldn't say karata. I wouldn't say that because she's not a ta, she's a t. You understand? I wouldn't call for you and I, Yared, to say, hey, you know, karaten. I wouldn't talk to us like that. I wouldn't say that. I would say karatem, tem. So you notice that you have to use your mouth. You have to pronunciate these last letters. But how do you know, based on what you see right here in these two examples, how do you know that they're plural? How do you know they're plural?
Amendment and noon,
Yes, the mem tells you that it's what?
masculine.
Thank you. The noon tells you it's feminine. Okay. But also, too, how would I know that it's you, second person plural? What letter tells me that it's as you? It's the tav. The tav is always going to let you know that it's you, whether it's singular or whether it's plural. You understand? And the sounds of this ah will let me know it's masculine. This t, right, real quick, right here, t, is feminine. The tem on the end that tells me that, you know, the mem on the end tells me it's plural. This noon right here tells me it's feminine, plural. Okay. But the you is always going to be the tav. If I got a tav on the front of a word, it's you. If I got a tav on the end of the word, it's you. But what kind of you is it? Is it masculine? Is it feminine? Is it single? Is it plural? You see? So when I look at this word down here for karatem, I know the tim because I hear the on the end lets me know it's masculine. But I also know that when I say t, I know that's you. But the tim lets me know, well, this is two letters versus this one letter. So that's singular. And these are two letters. That's two. So I know that's more than one. So I know that's plural. That's how you have to look at this. Okay. That's how you have to look at it. You got to know that's singular. This is a you with another letter. So that's plural. Easy way to remember. Okay. Another example of this is this word for rest is shavah. Okay. Shavath. Okay. So I rested, past tense is shavati. Okay. It's not shavathti. It's shavati. Okay. Shavati. Okay. Comes from our word, what? Sha-bat. Okay. from Shabbat. Okay. So if you want to say I rested as you rested today, you would be Shavati. Why isn't there a dot in this? That's a whole nother subject, but you know it's the Shabbat. But I rested. How do you know it's past tense?
The yod at the end.
Yes, but also too, don't forget that got the tav in there, right? The T, again, your piece on the end is this. And before they had another tav, but they got rid of it. But that dot in there tells you that it used to be two T's, because you would know your vocabulary word that the Shabbat is the actual verb to rest. So as soon as I do Shavati, I don't add another tav and a yod. What I do is I get rid of one and I just put the dot right here, and there it is, Shavati. Putting your pieces of your puzzle together. Okay, so the Shavata. I said Shavata. Question: is that talking to singular or plural? Singular. Great. Now, let me ask you another question. Since it's singular, is it male or female? Masculine or feminine?
Masculine.
Tell me why. That
T.
Yeah.
the ta. If it wasn't ta and it was feminine, it would be t. T. You understand? Because that's what it is right here. She has those and he has that. Ta. T. Ta. T. So when you get this, practice that. Okay. One last part, number 3. There's verbs that are starting with the aleph. Okay. We have seen that if I want to say I will in the future, we simply add an aleph onto the beginning of a 3 root letters of a verb. You see it on page 36. So I will speak would be adaber, adaber, ah. So sometimes you go hear or sometimes you go hear depending on what's in front or what the root is. So they're not going to say edaber, they're not going to say ashalak, they're going to say eshalak or adaber. Either way, okay, now getting into just pronunciations, what we're focusing on is what they're talking about. Anytime you add an aleph to the front of a 3 root letter, okay, or 3-letter root, you then would understand that the aleph means I will, because that at the front, front is future. So the question would be is, well, how do I say I will say? And the reason why they're asking this is because since to say is and uses an aleph as its first letter, okay? So I'll write it here a little bit bigger. Forget my writing. It's called Amar, okay? That's what it's called, Amar, okay? So, but if I said I will say, then that means that I would have to put another aleph in front of it. And they said, no, 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 no. We don't want that. It's not extended like that. So what do? Well, they're going to tell us. It would be this by adding an aleph onto the front, because the front means I will of the root. But no, we generally do not add 2 alephs, just like you don't add 2 tavs. You don't add 2 alephs together at the beginning of a verb. So what happens? One of the alephs are going to fall off, okay? Which is the one that's there. That's going to fall out. Get rid of that. And so now, instead of it being 2 alephs in the front, they're going to get rid of the one that was already there, and they're going to represent that I will by this little dot right here. So in the text, you will see Omar. Omar means I will say. It's just a rule. Omar. Well, you know that O right there really means two alepphs, as you saw, but they got rid of one. So they had to let us know some type of way. So they put a dot right there. And so Omar means I will. Amar by itself. Somebody tell me, since you've been with me, what does this right here mean? Because it's a 3-letter root. Is it perfect or imperfect?
Perfect.
Perfect. Is it a masculine or feminine?
Masculine.
Thank you. If I want to make it feminine, what would I add to it?
And
That's it.
I would put that ah on there. Amara. Amara. Put that ah on there and it makes it feminine. It's easy to remember. Any root. Shamar, you know, right? That means to guard. That's he guarded. But I want to say she guarded. I just throw a ha on there. Ah. Shamara. Okay. I know the vowels. Don't worry about the vowel points, but just put an ah on there. Okay. That's all it is. Shin, the mem, the resh, and then the hey. This is the femininity right here. As soon as I get rid of her, it's masculine. Both of them are perfect. Both of them are past tense. Okay. They're done perfectly. Okay. So in this case, this means he said. If I want to say I will say, because I will is future, because I added that aleph onto the front of that verb, then I'd have to remove one of the alephs and I would get this, and it would call Omar. And the last example that I'm going to have here is the akol. So akol is the root of the verb to eat. This is one of your Hebrew vocabulary words. Akol. So how would I say, if you notice, they don't have any vowels underneath this stuff. So it's interesting because they're trying to teach us that we got to remember how to say it. A call, like make a call, a call. A call means to eat. So I will eat. How would I say that? Well, of course, we got the example that we have with I will say. So we got the aleph as the front of our root. So the aleph has to fall off. And then you put the next aleph on it. And so how would you represent that? Well, since you added, we couldn't have this right here. It's not gonna look right, and people won't know what it means. So what they've done is they've turned around and said, well, let's make one of these alephs fall out of there so we can get this. Well, let's put a dot right here. That means that there's another aleph, and that means I will eat. So instead of saying call, I'm going to say o call. See, so is simple. O means I will. So there's several different ways that you can see that the call verb can be used. Okay, a call, simple. O call, I will eat. Okay, call. If I say call, I will devour. Okay, if I said a cool, that means I have eaten. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of different ways that you can say it, and it's based on sounds. All right, but a call is to eat, but you won't have it like this. This has to drop out, and then you would have that left over, but you would put that little dot. And when you see o call, you mean, oh, I will eat. So that's the future tense. I will eat. Okay. Next one, ahav, which is to love. So what do? Same identical thing. You go ahead and get rid of that extra aleph, add the one that you're putting. That means, and put that dot right there to represent that I will love. So if I want to say I will love you, I would say ohav. And if you're a female or a male, I would say ohav ata or ohav at. Okay. Ata. Got a dot in there. That means masculine. If I say at, That would just be feminine. Okay. So there's just these different little rules that you have to know when you're reading this and seeing this. And of course, they're going to give you some examples of this when you look at your cheat sheet at the end when you have your lessons. I call it a cheat sheet, but let's just call it advanced development. Because I want you to develop a little bit faster than, because we got a lot of catching up to do, right? So it's okay to know the answers, just if you understand how it's done. And it's not really cheating. I shouldn't really call it that. I would just call it a development tool. It's not a cheat. You're not cheating. You're developing yourself. Okay. Because if you leave it up to anybody else, you would never be developed. They'll always keep you in the dark as long as they possibly can. And that's not what our intention is. Our intention is for us to grow and to develop. And so as you would know, they have these rules. And so we found out some rules today about the lamed, that's going to fall off. We found out about the aleph, we found out about the tav. So you're going to find out these rules. And so basically and then you also found out today about some of the exceptions. So go over these exceptions, familiarize yourself with them. Don't trouble yourself too much. Be like, well, I got to remember this. Don't do that. I don't want you to do that. I do not want you to try to memorize this. All I want you to do is understand that there's rules. That's all. Just understand that there's rules. And when you see something, you'll be like, oh, I remember that, or I don't. Well, let me go back. And before you know it, the more often you see something, the more familiar you'll become with it, and it'll become second nature for you. You won't even trip. You're like, I know what that is. I know what a simikuth is. I know what this is. Oh, I know what that is. I've seen it before. Okay. So you're going to always have that. So I'm going to send those pages to you. Any questions that you guys have, contributions?